בצלגני ופיריח אש מהרה לויה לויה רומח ואתה אתה נותני תוך לבמס הנקה בדמם אשכרה לויה לויה אוהל ואתה אתה שוכני
Good Yontif. Good Yontif.
Good Yontif.
Hey, good morning and welcome back. Welcome to those who are joining us for the first time this morning. Welcome to everyone who's joining us at home or wherever you are in the world. It's so good for us to be together in this way. Our service begins as we sing together with Kolot Hine Matov.
Words are on page 21, so you can join us.
Thank
So I have to seize upon this teachable moment. I broke a string. You know, in traditional synagogues, they don't play instruments. And why don't they play instruments in traditional synagogues? Well, especially on Shabbat and on the holidays, we're forbidden from working. So in the minds of the rabbis, they said, you know, someone might be playing an instrument and break a string. It's not forbidden to play an instrument, that's not work, but fixing the string would be. But we're okay, I have a spare guitar right up there. So there was a man, and he was in the supermarket shopping. It was a grandfather, and he was there with his grandson. And, you know, as happens with little kids often, they get utsy. And a little boy was getting utsy, and he started to misbehave, and he was saying, "Dear Grandpa, I want candy!" And the grandpa was doing his best to keep his composure in the face of all that noise his grandson was making. He said, "William, just hang in there. We're almost done, just hang in there." And as they continued, of course, that didn't mollify the young boy. He kept on saying, "Grandpa, Grandpa, I'm tired, I'm hungry, I want to go home." And again, the grandfather said, "William, we're almost done. You'd be such a good boy. Just hang in there, okay? I'm so proud of you. We'll be out of here in a minute." Now, there was a woman who was watching this whole exchange between the grandpa and the grandson, and it went on for a few more minutes. The boy utsing and the grandpa saying, "William, William, don't worry, we're just about done. Just hang in there." And they finished, they paid for the groceries, they walked out, and the woman was leaving the store at the same time, and she turned to the grandfather and she said to him, "You know, you were so wonderful in there. The way you kept your patience, the way you were so kind and sweet, even in the face of all that noise to your grandson, William." And the man said, "I'm William. His name is Kevin." I think there's a good lesson in this story because there's so many times in our lives when we're confronted with a situation where somebody says something or does something and we just don't have the patience for it, and we want to lose it and say an unkind word or let it, you know, ruffle our feathers in a way that it really shouldn't. And maybe we can learn a lesson from from William. Count to 10. Remind yourself in the scope of things, how important is this? And behave in a way that we would be proud of ourselves, the way that we want to be, which is a mensch. And let's, as we spend this day together asking for forgiveness and thinking about who we want to be, doing that cheshbon nefesh, that accounting of our souls, let's make that a goal to do that in the year to come. Let's take a moment to say good yentif to everyone about us. Go ahead, make some noise.
And while you're there, please turn off your cell phones. We really appreciate it.
I'd like to invite everyone to take their seats once again as our service continues.
Page 24.
And we're on page 24
I think.
as we join together with
Yeah.
Claude in singing Matovu. Thank you, Claude. Our service continues on page 25. Sometimes I feel rotten inside, empty, phony. And no one else knows how bad I feel. They think I'm fine, doing well, successful even. But I know all the times I failed, the people I disappointed, the mitzvot I avoided. What hope can I have for the new year? I shouldn't even make new promises, seeing how my efforts in the past failed. Resolutions soon faded away, bad habits remain unbroken, good intentions remain unrealized. I can make no new vows. I can make no new efforts. I give up. And then, last night during Kol Nidre, I heard your plea. Get up. I only commanded 1 day for afflicting your soul. I gave you 10 days for repentance, for turning over a new leaf in the book of life. Now you will have 50 weeks to be renewed. Even if you don't have faith in yourself, I have faith in you. Get up off the floor and get up quickly. Falling isn't the worst sin. Staying on the floor is. So, all who are able, get up. As we continue on page 26. Standing at the waters of the Red Sea, at the Mason-Dixon line, at the walls of the Warsaw Ghetto, the Berlin Wall, the wall that separates men from women, the privileged from the persecuted, perpetrator from victim, the master from the slave, we hear the cry, as did our ancestors in ancient days, "Let my people go."
Yisrael, Kuma be'ezrat Yisrael, Uvdeichnu mecha, Yehuda ve'Yisrael, Go aleinu, Adonai Tzvaot Shemo, Kedosh Yisrael, Baruch atah Adonai, Ga'al Yisrael. Adonai, Sifatai Tiftach, Ufi Yagid Tehilatecha. Adonai, open my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu, Ve'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Ve'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Leah, Ve'Elohei Rachel, Ha'el, Hagadol, Hagibor ve'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, Ve'konei Hakol, Ve'zocher Chasdei Avot ve'imahot, U'mevi Geula Libnei Bneihem, Leman Shemo Be'ahava. Zoreinu l'chaim, Melech hafetz l'chaim, v'chadveinu b'sefer ha'chaim, lemancha Elohim chayim. Melech Hoseh u'Mashiach Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham ve'ezrat Sarah. Amen.
Today we see ourselves as we truly are. In a few moments we shall chant Unatana Tokef, an awesome prayer on an awe-filled day. How do we review the record of our deeds from this past year? How do we evaluate the quality of our existence? We cannot blame our conduct on forces beyond our control. We are fully responsible for the quality of our life, for making the most of it, or the least of it. The great shofar has sounded, and a still small voice is heard. Unatana Tokef is chanted as the book of life stands open.
Unatana Tokef, Unatana Tokef,
Please sit.
On Rosh Hashanah it is written, on Yom Kippur it is sealed. How many will leave this life, and how many will be born into it? Who will live, and who will die? Whose life will reach its natural end, and whose will be cut short? Who by water, and who by fire? Who by sword, and who by beast? Who by hunger, and who by thirst? Who by quake, and who by plague? Who by choking, and who by stoning? Who will rest, and who will wander? Who will be tranquil, and who will be torn? Who will be at peace, and who will be tormented? Who will be raised high, and who will be brought low? Who will prosper, and who will be impoverished? Utshuva, turning inward to face oneself. Utfilah, entering into prayer and contemplation. Utzedakah,
Giving to the needy as justice requires.
Ma'avirin et roah hagazera.
As we sing Barosh Hashanah together, these words that we just said have particular meaning. And think about the quakes and the floods and the disasters in our world. And that's what we're singing right now. rise together for those who are able on page 32 for the Kedusha. נקדש את שמך בעולם, כשם שהקדישים אותו בשמי מרום, ככתוב היה נביאך, וקרא זה אל זה ואמר, קדוש, 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 אדוני צבאות, ושבחך אלוהינו מפינו לא ימוש לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני המלך הקדוש.
Remain standing. You are asked to stand and consider the harm you've caused, the respect you withheld, the anger misspent, the fear spread, the earnestness displayed in the service of prestige and sensibility, all the callous, cruel, stubborn, joyless sins in your alphabet of woe, so that you might be forgiven. You are asked to believe in the spark of your divinity, in the purity of the words of your mouth and the memories of your heart. You are asked for this one day to starve your body so your soul can feast on faith and adoration. You are asked to forgive the past and remember the dead, to gaze across the desert in your heart towards Jerusalem, to separate the sacred from the profane, and be as numerous as the sands and the stars of heaven, to believe that no matter what you have done to yourself and to others, morning will come and the mountain of night will fade. To believe for these few precious moments in the utter sweetness of your life.
Hi da 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 Ashamnu
Ashamnu
Bagadnu
Bagadnu
Gazamnu
Gazamnu
Dibarnu Dofi
Dibarnu Dofi
Hi da 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 He'evinu
He'evinu
Vehirshanu
Vehirshanu
Zadnu
Zanu
Chamasnu
Hamas
Tafanu shaker.
Tafanu shaker.
I da die 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 da da die 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 da da die die die. Ya'atznu-ra.
Ya'atznu-ra.
Kizavnu.
Kizavnu.
Latznu.
Latznu.
Maradnu.
Maradnu.
Ni'atznu.
Ni'atznu.
Sararnu.
Sararnu.
Avinu.
Avinu.
Pashanu.
Pashanu.
Sararnu.
Saranu.
Kishinu oref.
Kishinu oref.
I da die 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 da da die 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 da da die die die. Rashanu.
Rashanu.
Shichatnu.
Shichatnu.
Tiavnu.
Tiavnu.
Tahinu.
Tainu.
Titanu.
Titanu.
I da die 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 da da die 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 da da die die die.
Please be seated. Page 36. Achet shechatanu lefanecha. We sin against you and we sin against ourselves.
For our failures of truth, Adonai, we ask forgiveness.
For pretending to emotions we do not feel.
For using the sins of others to excuse our own.
For denying our responsibility for our own misfortunes.
For refusing to admit our share in the troubles of others.
For condemning in our children the faults we tolerate in ourselves.
For passing judgment without knowledge of the facts.
For remembering the price of things but forgetting their value.
For teaching our children everything but the meaning of life.
For loving our egos better than truth. Al chet shechatanu lefanecha. We sin against you when we sin against ourselves.
For our failures of love, Adonai, we ask forgiveness.
For using people as stepping stones to advancement.
For confusing love and lust.
For withholding love to control those we claim to love.
For hiding from others behind an armor of mistrust.
For treating with arrogance people weaker than ourselves.
For condescending towards those whom we regard as inferiors.
For shunting aside those whose age is an embarrassment to us.
For giving ourselves the fleeting pleasure of inflicting lasting hurts.
For cynicism which eats away our faith in the possibility of love. Al chet shechatanu lefanecha. We sin against you when we sin against ourselves.
For our failures of justice, Adonai, we ask forgiveness for us and all humanity.
For the sin of false and deceptive advertising.
For the sin of keeping the poor in the chains of poverty.
For the sin of racial hatred and prejudice.
For the sin of denying its existence.
For the sin of withholding justice from the world.
For the sin of using violence to maintain our power.
For the sin of using violence to bring about change.
For the sin of separating ends from means.
For the sin of threatening the survival of life on this planet.
For the sin of filling the air with poisons.
For the sin of making our waters unfit to drink and unsafe for fish.
For the sin of pouring toxic chemicals upon trees and soil.
For the sin of war.
For the sin of aggressive war.
For the sin of appeasing aggressors.
For the sin of building weapons of mass destruction.
For the sin of obeying criminal orders.
For the sin of lacking civic courage.
For the sin of silence and indifference.
For running to do evil, but limping to do good.
For all these sins, forgive us, pardon us, grant us atonement.
Ve'akulam
about to begin our Torah service, and it's a pleasure to invite up onto the bima our Torah carriers for this Yom Tov. For the honor of carrying our Torahs in the Hakafah, Alberto and Tina Vasquez, who give so much to our temple and recently have been trimming all the trees around our property, and we are so thankful to them. And let's invite Kolot to come up onto the bima as well.
And those are able, please rise.
Adonai, Adonai el rachum v'chanun, erech apayim v'rav chesed ve'emet, notzer chesed la'alafim, nose avon, ufesha v'chata avanakeh. Adonai, Adonai is a compassionate and gracious God, patient, abounding in devotion and truth, assuring steadfast love for 1,000 generations, forgiving transgression, iniquity, and sin, and granting pardon.
We're on page 38.
Avinu Malkeinu, Chaneinu V'Haneinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Chaneinu V'Haneinu, Ki Eimanu Masin. Asei Imanu, Tzedakah v'Chesed. Asei Imanu, Tzedakah v'Chesed, Ve'Hoshienu. Asei Imanu, Tzedakah v'Chesed. Asei Imanu, Tzedakah v'Chesed, Ve'Hoshienu.
Avinu Malkeinu,
Avinu Malkeinu,
Haneinu V'Haneinu,
Haneinu V'Haneinu,
Avinu Malkeinu, Haneinu V'Haneinu, Ki Eimanu Masin. Susharim Rashechem, Vehi Nasu Pidchei Olam, V'yavo Melech HaKavod. Who's Melech HaKavod? Adonai Tzvaot, Melech HaKavod. Selah.
Beit Yaakov lechuvanelcha be'or Adonai, O house of Jacob, come, let us walk in the light of our God.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shemo.
You know, at all our bar and bat mitzvah services, before I lift the Torah for Hagbah, turn around and hold it aloft in the air, I always make a brief explanation there about why it is we're doing that. And the idea is that the Torah is a gift that was given to the Jewish people and through us to the rest of the world as a blueprint for making this world a better world. All the instructions are there, all the commandments, all the values, if we would only study it and put it into action. And the point of lifting it up is to show, literally, it's an open book. Hey guys, here it is. It's not like in some religions, private text locked in a cabinet with the wisdom only to be dispensed by some priest when he feels like it. It's not how Judaism works. It's an open book teaching for all of us and for all the world if we would only approach it and read it and study it. And there's a line that says, it is not beyond the sea or up in the clouds. It is right here in your hearts, in your mouth. And that line is in our Torah portion today, which is why I'm sharing the teaching. And there's another very important part of the theme of this Torah portion, and it's the reason that we read it on Yom Kippur every year. And it's about choosing. It's about choice. God says in the text, I place before you goodness and evil, life and death. Choose life, that you and your descendants may live. Duh, who wouldn't choose life? What's it talking about? Why is that even a choice? Or something to even ponder for a second. Who wouldn't choose life? Of course, you read a little bit more of the text, and it's about God commanding us to follow the commandments. Do this if you want to live long and prosper. And if you don't, maybe you won't. So the question arises, are we really free to choose here? Are we really free agents? And the answer is yes. And that's the point. Because in Judaism, we can't say the devil made me do it. Doesn't work that way. We are responsible ultimately and always for the choices that we make in life. There are a lot of things that happen to us that are beyond our control, obviously. We read earlier, and Lindy pointed it out, in the Unatan Tokef, Rosh Hashanah, and all the lines there about all the catastrophes and the things that happen that people die from it. It's beyond their ability to choose. And this year we have seen so much destruction. The forces of nature in Maui, in Lahaina, in Tunisia, whole cities washed into the sea, thousands of people who died. And those things happen. And our lives hang on a thread every day, because anything could happen. We can't choose the day of our death. But we can choose how we live in this world. We can choose how we treat other people. We can choose how we respond to the things that happen to us and the things that are said to us. And I think That's the point. I set before you goodness and evil. Choose life, that you and your descendants may live. May our choices be always for the good. So I invite Karma to come and join me on the bima. She's going to be our Lat Torah. She's going to be our chanter this morning. And it's my pleasure to invite on that's why you didn't come right up. Okay. So many things I have to keep thinking about. My pleasure to invite up onto the bima for the honor of our first Aliyah, our immediate past president, Emily Ripken. You've all heard me tell this story probably 1,000 times in the last 2 years. And I can't help myself. I'm going to say it again. When I came to Temple Israel 31 years ago, a much younger rabbi, Emily was in my first confirmation class. And she was amazing. Even back then, she was smart, she was kind, she was beautiful, and I knew she was going places. And she didn't let me down. And she went out into the world, and she got her degree, and she started her career, and she met a wonderful man. Actually, she already had met him because they went to high school together, Ryan. And I had the pleasure of officiating at their wedding, a beautiful ceremony in Ann and Bob, her parents' backyard. And she had 2 wonderful children, and she joined the temple and got to officiate at the brisses and at the bar mitzvah. And she became the president of our board of directors, following in the footsteps of both her parents, who were presidents during my tenure, her mom and Bob, a 3-time president. And you did such a wonderful job, Emily. I had no doubt that you would. You led our board of directors and our congregation with your intelligence, with your eloquence every time you got up here to speak. It was more than perfect. And most importantly, with your heart, with your menschlichkeit, with the goodness that just flows from every pore of you and who you are. And I thank you, and our congregation thanks you for all your hard work and dedication, all your wisdom, all your love, everything that you gave. And of course, when you're a president, it's not just a 2-year term. That's 6 years. You climb the ladder. And thank you so much. And what a pleasure to have you up here now and to honor you and to thank you. And I'd like to give a blessing. Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. May God bless you and keep you. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'chunecha. May God's countenance shine upon you and be gracious unto you. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. May God's face smile down upon you today and in all the days of your life. May you continue to be a leader, even without the title. A leader here in our community, in your family, in the world. May you continue to shine your light as you always do so brightly. and may you be blessed with shalom, with fullness, contentment, and peace. Amen. And we give a special plaque. You're welcome. And it takes a village, right? Nobody can do it alone. So I'd like to invite up the board of directors who work tirelessly with Emily and with Dave, who's our president now. Without them, the lights would not be on, nor the air, nor anything would be possible. So David Neustadt, Deborah Blinder, Beth Sanders, Madeline Colbert, Daryl Morrison, Robin Apple, Donna Baker, Nancy Friedman, Stephanie Goldman, Steve Jacobs, Stacy Sims, Tara Spagnola, and Cassie Vasquez. And the words for the Torah portion are on page 41. Baruch Adonai Hambarach Leolam Vaed.
Baruch Adonai Hambarach Leolam Vaed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai noten haTorah.
אתם ניצבים היום כולכם לפני אדוני אלוהיכם, ראשיכם שבטיכם, זקניכם ושוטריכם, כל איש ישראל, טפכם נשיכם וגרך אשר בקרב מחנך, מחוטב עצך עד שואב מימך, לברכה בברית אדוני אלוהיך ובעלתו, אשר אדוני אלוהיך קוראת עמך היום, למען חוקים אותך, היום לא לעם, והוא יהיה לך לאלוהים, כאשר דיבר לך, וכאשר נשבע לאבותיך, לאברהם, ליצחק ויעקב, ולא איתכם לבדכם, אנוכי כורת את הברית הזאת ואת העלה הזאת, כי את אשר ישנו פה עמנו עומד היום לפני אדוני אלוהינו, ואת אשר איננו פה עמנו היום.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torat emet v'chayei olam natan b'tocheinu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. Amen.
Yasher
I know every congregation thinks this about themselves, but we're the luckiest congregation in the world.
It's true.
We really are. For the second Aliyah, I have to just in case people don't know what this is, we have another wonderful group of people in our temple. We call them the Lamed Vavniks, after a Hasidic legend story that says that there are 36 people in the world, 36 righteous people doing good deeds, and it's for their sake that the world is allowed to continue to exist. Okay, Lamed Vav is how you say 36 using Hebrew letters. That's why we say the Lamed Vavniks or Lamed Vavnikim. We have this group at Temple of righteous, wonderful, menschy people who take it upon themselves to help me and Carmen, Lindy, our extensive staff, keep up with all the members of our congregation when they're in the hospital or when they're bereaving the loss of a loved one and they need extra help and attention and support from us. That's what these people do. So it's my pleasure now to invite up for the honor of the second Aliyah, the Lamed Vavnikim, John Boysa, Steve Jacobs, Marianne Messenger, Kathy Meyer, Marianne Schermerhorn, Barbara Schwartz, Susan Shaw, and Leslie Weiss. Baruch Adonai Hamvarach Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvarach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Ha'amim V'natan Lanu Et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Ki hamitzvah hazot asher anochi mitzavecha hayom lo niflet hi mimcha velo rechoka hi lo vashamayim hi lemor mi ya'aleh lanu hashamayim vayikachecha lanu v'yashmi'enu otav v'na'asena velo me'ever layam hi lemor mi ya'avar lanu el ever hayam vayikachecha lanu ve'yashmi'enu ata v'na'asena ki karov elecha hadavar me'od beficha uvilvavcha la'asoto re'eh נתתי לפניך היום את החיים ואת הטוב ואת המוות ואת הרע אשר אנוכי מצווך היום לאהבה את אדוני אלוהיך ללכת בדרכיו ולשמור מצוותיו וחוקותיו ומשפטיו וחיית ורבית וברכך אדוני אלוהיך בארץ אשר אתה בשמה לרשתה.
Those of you who were here last night, you saw the short, beautiful video that Ari put together for our Torah project, reminding everyone about it and inviting those who have yet to jump in to make a dedication to do so. We have lots of temple members who have done so already. Many of them got to write their letter when Neil Yearman was here. And what we're going to do now is invite up representatives from each of the different levels of giving, each of the different categories to represent them on the bima. And so it's my pleasure to call up Paul Wendell, Debbie and Barry Cohn, our good friends and who are not members of Temple Israel. They live in San Francisco, but they've donated to our Torah project. Anyone who's not a member who would like to donate to our Torah project, a shining example, follow their lead. Steve and Marika Campbell, Jeff Heiser, Kathy Barnes, Jeff and Pat Lindenberg, Rosalio and Anna Zapian, Jose and Adela Cabello, Dave Sorgent, and Corinne Ponder. Representatives from all the different levels. And it's always according to your means and according to your heart. And I want to thank everyone here for your generous donations. It's because of your giving that we're getting a new Torah here at Temple. And not only that, but raising funds to help sustain and make possible everything that we do. Because it's not just to pay for the Torah, it's also an important fundraiser for our congregation. Im Eim Kemach Eim Torah, a line from the Talmud. If there is no sustenance, there's no Torah. Im Eim Torah Eim Kemach. If there's no Torah, there's no sustenance. We need both Torah and sustenance. Baruch Adonai HaBarak Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai HaBarak Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Asher Bakar Banu Mikol Ha'amim Ve'natan Lanu Et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah. Amen. Ve'im yifnei levavcha ve'lo tishma ve'nidachta ve'hishtachavita le'elohim acherim va'avadetam higadeti lachem hayom Ki oved tovedun, lo ta'arichun yamim al ha'adama, asher ata over et hayarden, לבוא שמה לרשתה. העידותי בכם היום, העידותי בכם היום, את השמיים ואת הארץ, החיים והמוות נתתי לפניך, הברכה והקללה. ובחרת בחיים למען תחיה אתה וזרעך. לאהבה את אדוני אלוהיך, לשמוע בקולו ולדבקה בו, כי הוא חייך ואורך ימיך, לשבת על האדמה אשר נשבע אדוני לאבותיך, לאברהם, ליצחק ויעקב, לתת להם.
We're on page 43.
In the presence of our Sefer Torah, when it's out in the room, we like to say special blessings, and especially blessings for healing and good health for so many, our friends, our family members who are struggling, who are ailing in some way, and who need our help. They need our support, our phone calls, our visits, our cards, a meal, our love, whatever we can do to give them a little strength. And we need to pray for their good health and healing, because that makes a difference, that heals our hearts. And so as my hand passes, those of you who are on the live stream, please send in on the chat the names of loved ones that you'd like to add to our Misha Barak list as my hand passes across the room. Please say aloud the names of friends and family. don't be shy.
Dave Reichel, Paul Fairbrook, Evelyn Young, Sandra Cooperman, I'd like to add Gilbert Walter, Barbara Walter, Tricia and Emily Brown, Lisa Howard, Dr. Booker, Scout Junipers. And that's
And we add to all those names mentioned aloud, those of us here and those joining us from home, as we pray for healing of body, healing of spirit, a refuah shlema, a full and speedy healing. Baruch atah Adonai, rofeh hacholim. Blessed are you, O God, who heals the sick.
Amen.
And we're going to do the prayer that we always do at this time, but we're going to do a slightly different one because in my sermon today I'm going to be talking about Israel, that you couldn't have guessed, and the situation now, which is dire. And so we're going to pray a special prayer for the state of Israel that's going to be projected on the screen.
And let's read together.
My God, in this sacred moment, give us hope for Israel and her future. Renew our wonder at the miracle of the Jewish state. In the name of the pioneers who made the deserts bloom, give us the tools to cultivate a diversity of Jewish expression in Israel. In the name of our fallen soldiers, give us courage to stand up to the words and ways of the zealots, those in our own midst and those among our neighbors. In the name of Israeli inventors who have amazed the world with their innovations, help us apply the same ingenuity to finding a path to peace. In the name of all these women and men, grant us the strength to conquer doubt and despair in Israel, replacing doubt with action, replacing despair with hope.
And let us say, Amen.
Those beautiful words were written by Anat Hoffman. those of us who were in Israel this past summer had a wonderful meeting with her, and then some of our past trips we met with Anat as well. She was, until recently, the head of the Israel Religious Action Center, and also I don't know what the title is, but the Women of the Wall, one of the main leaders of Women of the Wall. Very passionate and inspiring Israeli. And we thank her for her beautiful and powerful words.
If you haven't checked your cell phone yet, you might want to do it now.
Remember what I said about why I'm lifting the Torah, because it's an open book. Pitch that phone out of the room.
Just turn it off. You don't need to talk to anyone. Those who are able, please rise. Vezot HaTorah asher sam Moshe livnei bnei Yisrael al pi Adonai beyad Moshe ki lekaktov natati lachem Torati al ta'azovu et chaimi la'machazikim ba v'tomcheha merusha. Stop for 1 second, because I made a big mistake. And please forgive me. I forgot to invite Fernanda Vasquez to come up and dress the Torah. Eitz Chaim hi la'machazikim ba v'tomcheha merusha. Other way. Please be seated. And if you're wondering, Fernanda is the daughter of Alberto and Tina, who were up here earlier holding the Torah. And Fernanda is the oldest of 5 daughters, and she grew up here at Temple, had her bat mitzvah, and is now a teacher in our school. And she's wonderful. I have loved and been a passionate supporter of Israel my entire life. And I'm old enough to remember the 6-Day War, when Israel turned what might have been its total destruction into a stunning victory. I was just a kid at the time. I was 9 years old. But I remember how proud I was that summer to see the picture of a young, triumphant Israeli soldier on the cover of Life magazine. Raise your hand if you remember that. I can see it like it was yesterday, sitting in my grandfather's kitchen. It made me stand a little bit taller, and it stoked my pride at being a part of the Jewish people. We have our own country, and it's a winner.
even as a 9-year-old, I understood that. It was the first time as a Jewish kid growing up in the San Fernando Valley that I felt a part of something big, something important and miraculous and meaningful. It was the fulfillment of 2,000 years of longing. In the words of the Haggadah, next year in Jerusalem, in the words of Hatikva, our hope is not yet lost to be a free people in our own land. I wasn't politically aware enough to understand it then, nor did I know the history, but I was celebrating the success of the modern liberation movement of the Jewish people. We were once again, after 2,000 years spread around the globe, we were once again a proud, sovereign nation, able to defend ourselves, able to have a hand in controlling our own destiny. And then, just 6 years later, in 1973, on Yom Kippur, I distinctly remember my rabbi with great emotion speaking from the Bima about what was happening in Israel on that very day. It was a surprise attack in what would later be known as the Yom Kippur War, when Israel faced an existential threat and was almost defeated. With thousands of Syrian tanks racing down the Golan Heights and an equal threat of Egyptian tanks crossing over the Suez, we came that close to losing it. And I remember going to the bank with my mother the very next day to have a cashier's check written from my bar mitzvah money. It probably wasn't enough to make much of a difference. Didn't finance the purchase of a single tank or ambulance, not by a long shot. But at least I got to feel that I was doing my part. Like Jews everywhere, my heart was aching. And I was deeply worried. Even then, I felt a strong connection to Israel and a responsibility as a diaspora Jew to do what I could do to support her, the 15-year-old me. Here we are now. 50 years later, on this Yom Kippur, the 50th anniversary of the Yom Kippur War. And this year, Israel faces what some consider is, again, an existential threat. But this time, it's not from the outside. It's not from the surrounding Arab nations who still refuse to accept Israel's very existence. No. This time, it's from within. From a fracturing of Israeli society, the likes of which we have never seen. One that threatens to tear apart the social fabric of the country and chip away at its most important founding principles. It's those lines in the Declaration of Independence which declare that Israel will foster the development of the country for all its inhabitants, that it will be based on freedom, justice, and peace envisioned by the prophets of Israel, that it will ensure complete equality of social and political rights to all its inhabitants, irrespective of religion, race, or sex. Now that's the Israel that I love. That's the Israel that, as an American Reformed Jew, I stand in awe of. The Israel that embraces both Jewish, and universal values, the only country in the entire Middle East that is a true democracy, the only one that respects the rights of women and minorities and citizens of all sexual orientations. Pride Day in Tel Aviv is one of the biggest in the world. It's great. That's the Israel that binds the United States and all the free countries of the world together with a shared commitment to democracy and democratic values. But sadly, that's the Israel that now seems like it's under attack. Maybe not immediately, or in a month, or in a year, but if the dreams of some of this current government's ministers come to fruition, it's that vision of a free, democratic, progressive Israel that is in the crosshairs. And so my heart, once again, is aching. And I am worried about Israel's future. In January, the most conservative right-wing coalition in Israel's history came to power. Its ministers include convicted criminals, ultra-nationalists, and religious extremists who have incited violence against Arabs, expressed openly homophobic sentiments, and compared Reform Jews to Hitler. I am not making this up. What about Theodor Herzl's vision of a safe haven for all Jews? What about the great thinker Ahad Ha'am, who believed that Israel should embody the noblest values of our Jewish heritage? What about Israel's Declaration of Independence, which guarantees equality and protection for all? Politically speaking, the most extreme ministers aim to accomplish the ascension of nativist voices that would annex the West Bank and expel the Palestinians. It would promote and deepen the stranglehold of the Orthodox rabbinate's control over marriage, conversion, and Jewish identity, let alone other issues of day-to-day life in Israel. And not just for the Orthodox, but for all Israelis. Let me give you just a few examples. In every major city, there's a struggle over what public services will be available on Shabbat. In Tel Aviv, they just completed a new light rail system that's going to do miracles in alleviating the horrible traffic congestion in the city. Just about any day of the week, it can take an hour just to drive a few miles through the city, and commuting is a nightmare. But bowing to pressure from the Orthodox rabbinate, this new light rail will not run on Shabbat. And this in a city that is overwhelmingly secular. We are proud that Israel long ago elected a woman, Golda Meir. I'm dying to see that new film. To be its prime minister, one of the first women in the world to be elected to high office. And Israeli women today serve as pilots in the Air Force. They serve on the Israeli Supreme Court. They are some of Israel's brightest academics, and they head high-tech companies. But women's faces on signs in public places are often defaced by religious zealots. God forbid, a woman's face should be shown in public. And there are signs in religious neighborhoods that warn women to dress modestly. To be fair, I know it's not all of them, but the most extreme among these new coalition ministers would give safe harbor to those kinds of misogynistic sentiments. Is this the Jewish homeland that follows after the vision of the prophet Isaiah to be an or l'goyim, a light unto the nations? Or will these moves lead Israel to look more like a Jewish version of Iran? There are those who argue you can't complain, that this government was democratically elected, which is true. But we have many examples of despicable, authoritarian, and fascist governments around the world that were put in power through democratic elections. Let that sink in for a minute. The first big issue that the coalition set to work on right away is an overhaul of the judicial system that would greatly diminish the power of the Israeli Supreme Court and do away with the checks and balances put in place to prevent government overreach. They're trying to get rid of the reasonableness doctrine, whose goal is to prevent the cabinet or its ministers from doing unreasonable things. I wonder, why would they want to do that? This is just the first step in a far more comprehensive plan. If you followed the news, you most likely heard it referred to as the so-called judicial reform. I say so-called because to me that sounds sterile and inconsequential and a little boring. But in truth, it is none of those things. What we are talking about minimally will erode democracy in Israel, and maximally we are looking at the first steps in dismantling it. And that is the spark that sent hundreds of thousands of Israelis every Saturday night, week after week, month after month, into the streets of Tel Aviv and Jerusalem and all around the country. We are in the 38th week of what is the longest and most impressive nonviolent protest movement anywhere in history. They come in unprecedented numbers, filling the streets as far as the eye can see, holding signs and proudly carrying the blue and white flag of Israel. They sing songs and they listen to inspiring speeches, and then they go home peacefully, only to return again the following week. Although they do sometimes block the highways and there's been scuffles with the police, they are overwhelmingly peaceful. They do not loot. They do not destroy. They do not hang effigies of these ministers, even though they despise what they're doing. When we were in Israel last June with our temple group, we changed our itinerary that Saturday night so that we could attend the rally in Tel Aviv. And it's hard to express in words alone how powerful that experience was. We could not understand the speeches because they were all in Hebrew, of course. And we couldn't even see the stage in that sea of flags and protesters. But we could feel the deep emotion and the urgency. And we all felt we were participating in a very significant moment in Israel's history. Prime Minister Netanyahu and right-wing pundits have tried to vilify the protest movement, painting it as far left and anti-Israel. Bibi even accused the protesters this week of colluding with Israel's enemies, Iran and the PLO. A comment he later tried to walk back. They are anything but. The protesters, they are proud, patriotic Israelis from across the political spectrum. They are the moderate center and both left of center and right of center. They are both secular and kippah-wearing observant Jews. They are veterans of the army, many who served as career officers and in some of the most elite units of the IDF. They are pilots and intelligence officers. They are mothers and fathers who send or who have sent their children at 18 into the army, worrying every moment for their safety. And they are the so many who have lost a son or a brother or a father or a cousin or an uncle or a best friend, who have died fighting for their country. They are anything but anti-Israel. Lahefek, they, as we say in Hebrew, just the opposite. They are proud Israelis who love their country, even with all its warts and challenges, who are struggling to preserve the modern, democratic, pluralistic society that the founders of the modern state of Israel so boldly created. It's that Israel that has defied the odds time and again. And as cliche as it sounds, it's that Israel, the country that made the deserts bloom, that built a thriving country with a first world economy in a corner of the world so lacking in resources. It's that country for which David Ben-Gurion, Israel's first prime minister, said, in Israel, in order to be a realist, you must believe in miracles. That Israel. For certain, this rift in Israeli society is something that's been brewing under the surface for quite some time. And it's clearly, though not exclusively, a secular religious divide with opposing visions for the country. The difference now is that the most extreme voices on the religious and political right now have positions of power in the government in a way they never have before. And you know the old joke, ask two Jews a question and you'll get three answers. Well, Israel, as the only Jewish country in the world, is a powder keg of different opinions. Chief among them, the definition of what it means to be both a Jewish and a democratic state. No one at this point can predict what outcome of all this will be. Will cool heads prevail in the end? Will Israel's leaders, both in power and in the opposition, find a way to compromise and pull back the country from the brink of disaster? From a civil war, not only of words and ideas, but of violence? Only time will tell. If there's any silver lining in what's happened, at least from my point of view, it's that this protest movement has awakened a sleeping tiger and shaken it from its complacency. Thousands, perhaps hundreds of thousands of Israelis who have been complacent and disengaged have been stirred to action. They are filling the streets every Saturday night because they care, because they love their country. What they do with that new awareness and activism will, God willing, make a difference, perhaps giving birth to new political parties or a coalition of parties that can forge a new path forward. And what about us? We Jews who live in the diaspora. Well, first, this is not the time for us to disengage or for us to be complacent. We don't vote in Israel's elections and we don't serve in Israel's army, but we are not strangers. I think back to that 9-year-old kid I was in 1967, looking at those pictures in Life magazine, and how proud that made me feel, how it boosted my Jewish identity. Even then I understood that this is my family, that as a Jew, I have a stake in what goes on in Israel. And I think of myself in 1973 and how I responded to that critical time of danger in Israel, going to the bank to get that cashier's check so that I could make a contribution to do what I could to help. Well, this is one of those times again. This, as they say in Israel, is a red alert. And Israel needs us. As Israeli writer Yossi Klein Halevi has said, when someone you love is in trouble, you don't push them away, you draw them nearer. We might be disenchanted and repelled by some of what we see going on in Israel. We might be frustrated and angered by the policies of the government. So, then it's our job to give support to the organizations in Israel that fight every day in the name of democracy and pluralism, and all the things that we care about. The vision of Israel, those protesters are marching for week after week. I will put a short list of those organizations on our Temple e-blast with a link for you to follow. Make a contribution and be as generous as you can. Educate yourself. Come to our Zoom session this afternoon between services with Yoav Weiss, an Israeli sociologist and active participant in the protest movement. He's Anat Hoffman's brother. If you haven't been to Israel yet, or if you haven't been there for a while, go and experience firsthand the miracle of Israel. This is not the time to stay away. If enough of you want to go again, Lindy and I will take you. We'll lead another trip. Israel's protest movement is staunchly pro-Israel, and we should be too. No, we need to be too. You know, another heartwarming outcome of the protest movement is the re-embracing with renewed meaning of Israel's most important patriotic symbols, both the blue and white flag and the singing of Hatikva. As long as within our hearts a Jewish soul sings, our hope is not yet lost. It is 2,000 years old to be a free people in our own land, the land of Zion and Jerusalem. Won't you please stand and join me in the singing of Hatikva? Yehi Ratzon. May it be God's will. Amen. Please be seated. Just a few announcements. Thank you to Claude, to Beth Sanders on clarinet, Pat Lindenberg on the flute, Carlos Lopez on percussion, and all those who participated and enriched our service this morning. Thank you, Ari Gwastov, for connecting us with our friends at home. At 1 o'clock, we'll be joining Israeli activist Yoav Weiss via Zoom. If you don't have the Zoom link, you can join us in the sanctuary for a group Zoom. And we'll have a chance not only to hear him speak, but to ask questions. At 4 p.m., he's going to be joining us from Israel. At 4 p.m., we continue with our afternoon service. Yisker and Neela, breakfast will be approximately 6:45. There's a, yeah?
There's also a family service
Family
today
service at
2:30.
2:30.
So, and family is however you see. Family is
School-age children.
School age, preschool students, and grandparents, and anybody that would like to continue being with us today, especially if you're fasting. It's a nice place to be, and it's a wonderful service.
That was my mother's favorite service every year.
Yeah. That's at 2:30. Then at 4 o'clock.
We would appreciate it if you could return your prayer book to the table in the gallery or the table by the March Lane exit. And if you are going home and you haven't yet had the opportunity to bring a bag of groceries to go to the Emergency Food Bank, our annual collection, just a little reminder, this might be a good time to fill a bag and bring it back when you return for afternoon service.
We want to fill that alcove of bags, so help us do it.
So this is not an ending, because there's a lot more ahead, but Gamar Tov.
We'll see you all day. Bye to those online.